Okay, so welcome back everyone to another session on the Parayana and now we will have a look at the Upa Sutta, which Ajahn Karunika mentioned briefly during the last session. And this is, I'm afraid to say, maybe one of the most profound suttas in the Parayana. If you think it's been profound already, this is kind of even more difficult in many ways. It's not that the profundity is so different, because the profundity is all about the ending of rebirth. And of course it doesn't really get more profound than that. It's just the way that it is expressed and the way it is talked about that makes it a bit difficult to kind of fully appreciate what is going on. But that also makes it kind of interesting, when it's profound, and so it's not all bad. And we're going to try to somehow kind of pull this, kind of figure out what's going on here with the Upa Sutta. Upa Siva, by the way, Siva is the same word as the Sanskrit word Shiva. Shiva, one of the gods of Hinduism. And so this is the prefix Upa and then Shiva after it. And it's one of those strange things that you find in the suttas. You find many of these Hindu gods. They're actually there in the suttas, especially in the Devata Samyutta, the Devaputta Samyutta. At the beginning of the connected discourses, you find all of these Indian gods. And why not? Yeah, they are gods. They're going to need some kind of name. Might as well give them the Indian, the Hindu names. Yeah, they're going to need something. This is Shiva, this is Sakka, this is Prajapati or whatever. So this is a Upa Siva. So it's a different kind of Shiva or Siva. Anyway, so let us see what happens when Upa Siva goes through. This is the sixth sutta, by the way, if you haven't found it, on page 30 and 31 of the booklet. Actually, the very middle of the booklet, actually. I can see the staples in here. So that's good. So now I'll read it out for you, and I'll comment on it as usual. So let's go through it first of all. So alone, without anything to rely on, O Sakya, said Venerable Upa Siva, I'm not able to cross the great flood. Tell me a support, universal I, relying on which I may cross this flood. Mindfully seeing nothingness, replied the Buddha, depending on the perception, there is nothing, cross the flood. Having renounced sensual pleasures, refraining from chatter, watch for the ending of craving day and night. One who is free from desire for sensual pleasures, said Venerable Upa Siva, depending on nothingness, all else left behind, freed in the ultimate liberation of perception, might they remain there without traveling on? One freed from sensual pleasures, replied the Buddha, depending on nothingness, all else left behind, freed in the ultimate liberation of perception, they might remain there without traveling on. If they were to remain there without traveling on, even for countless years, universal I, and being freed were to become cool right there, would the consciousness of such a one pass away? As a flame tossed by a gust of wind, replied the Buddha, comes to an end and cannot be reckoned, so too a sage freed from mental phenomena comes to an end and cannot be reckoned. One who has disappeared, says Venerable Upa Siva, do they not exist? Or are they free from disease for eternity? Please, sage, answer me clearly, for truly you understand this matter. One who has disappeared cannot be measured, replied the Buddha. There is nothing by which others might describe them. When all things have been eradicated, eradicated too are all ways of speech. There is no further pages, you don't need to go any further. That's enough, otherwise we could be in serious trouble if there was more after this. So this is already pretty heavy going here. So let's see what's going on here. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Sometimes when you hear things that are obviously profound and they're difficult to understand, it allows you to go a bit deeper in what's happening here. And of course, the point of going deeper is not just because we want to intellectualize or we want to be kind of sophisticated Buddhists or anything like that. The purpose we're going deeper is to kind of provide more of a framework, a deeper understanding of what is happening, and ultimately illuminate the path, illuminate what it is that we have to do to achieve these very lofty goals, which is part of this, incomparable Dhamma, really. So he starts off, and he starts off in a way that we would kind of expect. This is the sort of thing that we saw from the very beginning. I don't know if you're able to remember the Ajita Sutta at the very early times. It seems like a long time ago. With the Ajita, it was actually on the same retreat. Can you believe that? So, anyway, so this was a similar kind of thing, right? He needed something to rely on, and here you have the same kind of idea. Yeah, alone, by myself, without anything to rely on. How can I cross the great flood? Yeah, so again, these Brahmins obviously have a very strong idea of, of ending rebirth, which is kind of very unusual for Brahmins. So they were obviously very spiritually advanced. So what can I rely on? Tell me a support, relying on which I may cross this flood. And so what is that support? And of course, the most important support, especially if you are a Brahmin and you come from another religious tradition, the most important thing that the Dhamma provides is right view, right understanding, the right attitude towards the world, because that is what's unique with the Dhamma. What the Buddha presents, he presents the idea of non-self, and that is what kind of is revolutionary, if you like, in the history of spirituality or history of religion. And so that is really what you normally expect. And that's why you rely on the Buddha, because he has that insight. That's why you rely on the Aryans, because you have that insight. That's why you rely on the Suttas, because they have that. So it's a reliance on the idea of right view. But there's other ways of thinking about what to rely on. So that's one thing. That's obviously why they asked the Buddha. And so you can this is kind of underlying this, the idea of right view. This is an important part of what we're seeing here. But the Buddha's answer is a bit different, like we just heard. So what the Buddha says instead, he says, mindfully seeing nothingness. Depending on the perception, there is nothing, cross the flood. Yeah, this is what you should rely on, depending on the perception of nothingness. And the idea here is that when you practice the Noble Eightfold Path, the Noble Eightfold Path ends with samadhi, it ends with the 4 jhanas. And the reason why it ends with that is because that is then what you rely on, what you depend on, to be able to gain the insights that take you all the way across the flood of samsara. So you do rely on right view, but the purpose of that right view is to create a mind state through which you can have those insights. So in one sense you rely on right view, on the other sense you rely on samadhi. Right view takes you to the samadhi, which then allows you to see things in accordance with reality. So it's like both in a sense that you rely on. The difference is that for these Brahmins, you can see this, he talks about the idea of nothingness here as if these Brahmins already understand it. And this is kind of the message we get throughout the Parayana is that they already had an understanding of the state of nothingness. So the Buddha, so the thing which kind of makes it unique, Buddhism, is that on the one hand, it then supplies that right view, which no one else has. So even though other people have the state of nothingness, without right view, it doesn't work. You stop there, you don't go any further. On the other hand, if you have a right view, but you haven't got this state of samadhi, also that is also not sufficient. So you need both of these together, and that's why you rely on both of them to be able to make the breakthrough. So nothingness is what he says, and you may wonder, why does he talk about nothingness? Why doesn't he talk about the 4 jhanas? That's what you find on the Noble Eightfold Path. And the answer, presumably, is that that is what they were acquainted with. Yeah, they had gone a long, long way. I mean, these are very, very profound states of meditation, beyond the jhanas, in a sense. And so he deals with them with what they have discovered, with what they already know. And that's always a very skillful way of dealing with people. So the immaterial attainments can take the place of the four jhanas. The four jhanas are enough, and that's why the Noble Eightfold Path doesn't go beyond the four jhanas. But the immaterial attainments can also be used for understanding a reality, for gaining deep insight. So depending on the perception, there is nothing. Cross the flood. And it's kind of amazing, isn't it? The perception, there is nothing. What is that? The perception, you are perceiving that there is nothing at all. It's like, how can that even be a perception if there is nothing? It sounds like a contradiction in terms, right? If there is nothing, then surely there is no perception. That's kind of the point. The point is that you have a perception that there is nothing. You know how the immaterial attainments go? There is the infinite space, infinite consciousness, and then you remove the infinite consciousness, and then there is nothing left. And so there is perception of nothingness. It is not the same thing as nothingness, because nothingness means the perception is gone too, right? So there's a perception of nothingness. And so it is a very, very subtle thing. You're coming to the very end of the kind of perceptions that are possible to be had as a human being. It goes beyond the jhanas. With the jhanas themselves are also very fascinating and interesting. They're not really talked about in the Parayana Vagga, except maybe in a couple of places it talks about jayati. Jayati means to meditate, and it's the same word as jhana, and so it implies jhana meditation. But the jhanas are also very interesting because they are, about happiness, piti and sukha. First jhana, viveka ja piti sukha, piti like rapture, sukha happiness, viveka ja dependent on seclusion. We just had a long explanation of seclusion in the previous session. That was really, really interesting. And then the second jhana, you have samadhija piti sukha, rapture and happiness born of stillness. So there's a deeper kind of happiness. In the third jhana, the piti fades away. All you have is sukha, the happiness, of which the Aryans say the one who has the third jhana abides happy in the world. It's so understated, right? This is the highest happiness that is possible to have in samsara in terms of happy feelings. The Aryans say, yeah, now you're happy. It's kind of, I like that. It's so really understated. They don't exaggerate at all. Like everything before was kind of, that was kind of, even though you think you have, when you start to get some joy, a little bit of joy in the meditation, you'd kind of jump up and down. Yay, wow, this is wonderful. And you feel so happy when you get some joy in the meditation. You know what it's like? And you're just at the beginning of this path. You're just starting out, feeling a bit of joy and happiness. The profundity that is available is just absolutely astonishing. I remember Ajahn Brahmali once said, he said that when you go through these jhanas, there comes a point where you wonder, am I able to take any more bliss? There's so much bliss. You wonder whether you're going to explode or whether you're going to take it. There's just so much happiness. And this is what the Aryans say, yeah, now you're happy, yeah. And then the amazing thing, then you come to the fourth jhana. The fourth jhana, you leave behind all happiness. There's no sukha and piti anymore. You get to equanimity. And then it turns out that equanimity is more happy than happiness. Isn't that strange? How is that possible? This is what we're talking about before. There's an underlying tendency to ignorance. When it comes to equanimity, we think that when we have no happiness and suffering, adukkha sukha vedana, neither happy nor painful, it seems like kind of boring and whatever, until you kind of get these states and you realize these are the highest things that are possible to attain in samsaric existence. So that's kind of the fourth jhana. All you have is equanimity. But then you go beyond the fourth jhana. So you kind of give up. What is given up there is a kind of final remnant of rupa sanya. Yes, final brightness of the mind or something like that. And you go to infinite space. You perceive limitless space without limit. And And then beyond limitless space is limitless consciousness. When you give up the consciousness, then you get to nothingness. And that is what we're talking about now. You can see how profound this is. Yeah? And it's very, very rare for people to achieve this kind of samadhis in the world. Really, really rare. And it's very easy to overestimate oneself, because it's so easy to have experience in meditation that kind of approximate to this. Yeah, you think, wow, this is really spacious. This must be limitless space. No, wait, hold on. Yeah, first of all, go through all of these stages, then you get there. Yeah, be careful. The danger with overestimation is that you will not reach the goal, because if you think you have achieved the goal already, obviously you're not going to go there, right? So it's a big problem, overestimation. So this is the what we are talking about here. Yeah, the akinchana yatana, the sphere of nothingness. Sorry, not infinite, of nothingness. Yeah, so depending on that profound samadhi, you have come to the very end of the path. You have achieved all the fourth jhanas, even more than that. Now you get the spark of right view with the Buddha, the two coming together, as I mentioned, the deep samadhi and the right view. That is what is really required. Then you are ready. We have to assume here that the Buddha has said something about right view. It isn't really explicitly mentioned, but we have to assume that it is part of this. Then, of course, having renounced sensual pleasures, that's kind of, we have been seeing this throughout, been a lot of emphasis on renouncing sensual pleasures, refraining from chatter. I don't think chatter is a very good translation. I'm sorry, Bhante Sudhata. We should have changed this one, Venerable Karunika. We forgot to change this one. Because the Pali word is kata. Kata means like talk, or speaking. So it's not just chatter, it's really any kind of speaking. So you stop speaking at this particular point because you realize it disturbs your mind. And you can assume that this also includes internal speech, in this case. And then you watch for the ending of craving day and night. You are on the cusp. You are so close to the ending of craving when you have these kind of samadhis. You are kind of on the verge of awakening. That's what the Buddha is saying. And now all you have to do is just relax and just wait for the ending of craving to come. It's like you are waiting for the ending of craving to come. Is like inclining the mind towards that. You're inclining your mind towards that, understanding how positive it is, wanting that, desiring the ending of craving, not in a kind of strong desire kind of way, but just as a gentle inclination of the mind. That's what I think this is about. And then Venerable Upa Sutta says, but the one who is freed from desire for sensual pleasures, depending on nothingness, all else left behind. All else left behind. One of the purposes of deep samadhi is that you have already given up so much. When you come to deep samadhi, you have given up the body. The body is long gone. You have given up the five senses. You have given up the will. All that is left in deep samadhi is this one experience that you're having right there and then. Completely still, solid experience. In the lower jhanas, it is just the experience of bliss. That's what the jhana state is. It is just bliss. That's basically what these states are. And because there's so little left, everything else that has been let go of already has already been understood. That's why you have been able to let go of it, because you have understood it. In the suttas, letting go and understanding are synonymous terms. They mean the same thing. You cannot, if you have deep samadhi, it means whether you believe it or not, you have already understood those things that you have given up. Because you can only give something up if you understand that it is not worth holding on to. At that moment, you let it go. Sometimes in your meditation, suddenly you let go of the body. It becomes very peaceful. The body is not really there anymore. It may still be kind of within reach, but it's not really present. And that means that you have understood that the body is worth letting go of, at least at that point in time, maybe not permanently. And so everything else is left behind. All you have left is this one perception of nothingness. The rest of the world has already been let go of. That's all you have to let go of. You have to let go of nothingness. What do you mean how to let go of nothingness? I thought that was the point of nothingness. It is kind of letting go. But now, no, you're still holding on. You still have that as the refuge for the perception of self, is the nothingness. So all else left behind, freed in the ultimate liberation of perception, might they remain there without traveling on? One free from desire for sensual pleasures, replied the Buddha, depending on nothingness, all else left behind, freed in the ultimate liberation of perception, they might remain there without traveling on. So what is going on here? What is this all about? Before I talk about the idea of remaining there without traveling on, because this is a bit cryptic, let's talk a little bit about the idea of liberation of perception, because it's kind of strange. What does it mean, the liberation of perception, the ultimate liberation of perception? And what it means is that the various kind of states of mind that you achieve through the practice of the path, you can achieve a large number of different states of mind. They are often called liberations of the mind. They're called vimutti. Vimutta is one word for this, or vimokkha. Vimokkha is another one. Nisarana is also a word that is used sometimes for liberation or letting go. And so there is a large number of states that are called liberations. One of those states is arahantship, becoming fully enlightened, but that's the last and final liberation of the mind. Prior to that, you have various samadhis. They're also called liberations of the mind. There's a distinction between sammaya vimutti and asammaya vimutti. Sammaya means time, asammaya not to do with time. And so the liberations that are the samadhis, they're called sammaya vimutti. They're vimuttis that are limited in time. Asammaya vimutti is a liberation not limited in time, it's permanent. In other words, it's permanent. So there's lots of these sammaya vimuttis, the temporary liberations of the mind that we have. And so one way of thinking about this Buddhist path is as consecutive or a whole range of liberations as you gradually liberate your mind from states that are oppressive to you. Liberation means giving up things that are oppressive, things that constrain you, things that hold you back, things that stop you from being happy, etc., etc. That's why they're called liberations, because you're giving things up. And so every time you sit down, you become a bit peaceful. It's a little bit of liberation. It's a little bit of freedom. And so contemplate that. Understand. There's something to me, very attractive about the word liberation and freedom. We all understand that we want to be free, right? It's the opposite of being in prison. It's very intuitive that liberation and freedom is something very beautiful. But of course, the majority of people in the world, they don't really understand what freedom really is. They think freedom is some kind of external state, but freedom is an inner state of mind. And that is what is so amazing about it, because it means that we can find this within. It's up to us to discover these states. We don't have to rely on the world outside to kind of give these things to us if they wish to give it to us, or they don't, or whatever. It's actually within us, within our own grasp. This is what is so beautiful about this. So think about the Buddhist path as a movement towards more and more liberation, more and more freedom. See that inside of yourself. Feel that freedom that you have when you are free of opposing states. And so an obvious example of this kind of liberation is when you are angry, you are kind of in prison. You can't. If you try to stop being angry often, you can't even get out of it. It's kind of terrible. You know what it's like if you're a Buddhist trying to stop being angry, and sometimes the more you try to stop, the worse it gets sometimes. It's kind of terrible. You are in the grip of that anger, and you feel trapped by it. You feel constrained by it. You cannot be nice. You cannot do any, the good things that you're supposed to be doing. It kind of blocks you. Or I was mentioning before, we were talking a lot about attachments on this retreat. And you can see how, if you look carefully, how those attachments also imprison you. They imprison you because you are vulnerable to what happens to the objects that you are attached to. But they also imprison you because it kind of constrains the mind that has craving, The mind that's attached to something is often like a small mind. That kind of not solidifies, but it kind of revolves around the object of the attachment. It's not a large mind that expands out to the whole universe and takes everything in there. It is kind of very confined and low. And this is what you find in the suttas as well. The Buddha talks about the mind that is constrained and unconstrained. And the constrained mind is the one that is constrained by the five senses. It is kind of narrow, small, not bright, not brilliant, not beautiful, but very limited. And then you get to the jhanas, and then suddenly you are free of the constraints of the five senses or the hindrances. And then you find that actually the first jhana has its own constraints. You let go of those, you go into the second jhana. And so you gradually liberate the mind from all of these things that actually are prisons of the mind. Ajahn Brahmali always uses the idea of being in the prison of the five senses. And he says that, enjoying the world of the five senses is like being in prison and painting it with different colors. I can paint my prison cell with red, hooray! Yellow in the corner over here, a bit of blue in the ceiling, hooray! What a wonderful prison cell I have. Isn't it better to leave the blooming prison? That's kind of much better, right? Get the guard, or don't even get the guard. The door actually happens to be open already. That's kind of the whole point of the assembly. The door is open. You can walk out any time. But no, you would rather paint your prison cell rather than walking out. That's Ajahn Brahm's kind of simile. I think it's very nice simile for what things are like. It is up to us to walk out of that prison. And it can be done. That's kind of the whole point. And so you see the confinement of the mind, the constraints of the mind, coming onto us in this way. And we want to kind of liberate it, bring it out. It's a kind of gradual freedom and liberation in this way. And one way to understand this is to understand it through this idea of liberation of perception. So perceptions is a very broad category within our mind. Everything that we understand in any way, we understand it because of perception. Perception is what gives things meaning and names and makes it possible to distinguish between things. If I had no perception now, I would have seen this kind of mass of color and grayness in front of me. I wouldn't be able to distinguish, human beings, mats, floor. These are all perceptions, right? Your ability to make sense of the world in whatever way comes through perception. But perceptions can also be understood as a hierarchy of perceptions that are good for practice and bad for practice. And the highest kinds of liberation of perception, this is kind of where we want to go. We want to move towards the very high, the liberation of perception that we're talking about here. And here the liberation of perception is that state of nothingness, when you perceive nothingness and nothing else. That is kind of the highest liberation of perception, because you are still perceiving, but it's a very free kind of perception. You are taking away all of those opposing states that make life miserable. And Venerable Karunika was mentioning the other day this beautiful sutta about the who are those who get liberated in the world? Who are those who don't get liberated? And Venerable Sariputta describes this, when the Buddha also describes this in another place, another sutta, is that you have to know it is those people or those beings who understand the difference between the hanabhagya sanya, the perceptions that lead to decline. Those beings understand that, they will get liberated. Those who don't understand that, they won't get liberated. Tittibhagya sanya, the perceptions that lead to kind of staying where you are, remaining where you are. The Visesa bhagya sanya, that leads to kind of Visesa is like distinction, the mind becoming better or improving. And finally, Nibbeda bhagya sanya, which is the liberation or the penetration through insight. These are the things that we need to do. So you can see all of this is about perception, how to use perception, and then gradually liberating the mind from the bad perceptions and moving on to the good ones. So what does this mean in practice? Well, one of the great ways of thinking about this is we know that some of the big issues, we've just been talking about sensual pleasures, even more basic thing to overcome is ill will and anger. I'm sure all of you would be very, very happy to get rid of anger and ill will completely. And sometimes we fight our anger, we try to overcome it, but we're not always very skillful. The intention to be angry arises, we can see our mind moving in that direction, but often we don't really understand what is going on. And what is going on is that your perception is the problem. The perception is what gives rise to the intention or the will towards having ill will or to having anger. Perception is at the root of this. Perception is a direct consequence of contact. Dependent origination, you have the 6 sense bases, comes contact, comes feeling, and then in certain ways that the perceptual process is explained, with that feeling comes perception. Perception is a very basic thing that arises whenever we experience the world. It's part of every mental experience we have has perception in it. And so what we have to do if you want to overcome ill will is work with our perceptions. You have to see the world differently. And when you understand the right kind of perception, those that lead to visesa, to distinction, to something positive, then we pursue those perceptions. And we do not pursue those perceptions that lead to decline, lead to going down. This is the idea here. How do we pursue those perceptions? We have to train the mind. We have to think about it again and again. We're talking about the death contemplation recently. How do you do that? You train your mind in the perception of death by trying to feel what it's like to die right here and now, etc., etc. And as you train your mind in this way, this perception becomes stabilized within you, and you can bring it out whenever you need to use it. And then when you bring it out, it blocks the opposing states that are problematic from arising. And so this is true with anger and ill will. And I would really encourage every one of you to work on this. This is really powerful stuff if you want to overcome those defilements of the mind. And you can do this throughout the day. This is the sort of thing you can do in your daily life when you meet people or whatever, whether you work or whatever it is that you do. This is kind of where so much of this is at. And the very basic idea, we already talked about these suttas already that talk about this, talk about the Agata Pativinya Sutta, the Anguttara Nikaya 5s, 161 and 162, and which basically are about dispelling of anger. And they are dispelled by perceiving people in the right way. And one of those really beautiful ways that the Buddha talks about, actually Venerable Sariputta, the Buddha talks about the first one, Venerable Sariputta the second one, is to remember the good qualities in people. When you see something bad, remember the good. And this is kind of what I really always recommend people on the retreats like this. Look at the people around you and find some, inspiration in all of these people trying to live well, doing the right thing, practicing a spiritual path. What a wonderful thing that is. And how easy it is to forget that, because it's so easy to get irritated by things. I'm sure, is there anyone here who hasn't got a little bit irritated by someone else for the whole retreat? Maybe some of you haven't gotten irritated at all, and that's the case. Congratulations. But it's very, very easy to get a little bit irritated because someone else does something in a way that doesn't suit us or whatever. But remembering the big picture, you shift your mind back to the big picture. You shift your mind towards those good qualities. And then suddenly that irritation seems so silly. It seems so small-minded. It seems so petty. Why am I focusing on this pettiness? I can focus on something which is much more lofty and beautiful instead. And this is how we have to look at people in the world. Learning to see the goodness in other people. There is a lot of goodness in the world. There is a lot of good qualities around when you start looking. If you look at the news, you will never see any good qualities. But if you see other things, if you see ordinary people in ordinary life, you see a lot of good qualities. The news is the last place. Actually, we should ban the news for Buddhists. It should be precept number 6 or something. Because it's just like a kind of it's a kind of condensing of all the worst things that happens in the world in 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever, right? I mean, who needs that, right? It is not, if anything is not reality, it's the news. People seem to think that's reality. I need to know what's going on. Okay, a little bit knowing what's going on might be helpful. But actually, it is not reality at all. Reality is the people we meet in our ordinary life. Reality is Jhana Grove. Reality is our Buddhist companions. This is the real reality. This is what actually is going on. The stuff that goes on TV is it's nothing. It's just really just the accumulation of negative stuff in one place. And obviously, it is not what reality is. And so we need to be wise what we attend to. We need to be wise about what we spend our time with. Otherwise, we're going to be dragged down by all of these things. So perceive the goodness in people around you. Lift that up. Make that important. Forgive the negative qualities. Of course, people are going to have negative qualities. They have been conditioned by the world. There's so many difficult things happening in the world. They have been conditioned by parents who are not perfect. They have been conditioned by teachers and society that is often problematic and difficult. Of course, people are going to have difficult qualities. The miracle is that people are not completely, just entirely full of bad qualities. That's the miracle. And so you rejoice in the good qualities and you forgive the bad ones because you understand that is just par for the course. It's inevitable. Of course, people are going to have some bad qualities. And so this is such a way, a perception, yeah? And that perception underlies whether we get ill will or not, whether we're able to deal with the ill will. Yeah, it is at the root of this whole thing. We need to perceive things in the right way. Visesa bhagya sanya is what we're looking at here. Another way, even more profound way of thinking about people is this thing we have been talking about all along, which I always love to talk about. And in this particular sutta, Majjhima Nikaya Nikaya 562, they talk about someone who doesn't have any good qualities. And they say when someone doesn't have any good qualities, we should think of them as a sick person. Yeah, when someone has bad conduct by body and speech, they have bad mental qualities, they are like a sick person. And they are like a sick person. Not only are they a sick person, but like a sick person in the wilderness, where there's no food, there's no drink, there's no medicine, there's no doctor, there's no nurse, there's no nothing. Yeah, and of course, if you are sick and you're kind of walking in the wilderness, there's no one to help you, you're kind of walking towards your demise. You're going to die soon if you are really sick in that situation. Yeah, and this is what it is like when someone has bad qualities. They are sick. They are walking towards suffering. They're walking towards terrible suffering in this life and even more so in the future life. They are fundamentally ill. If they understood what they were doing, they would never do it. They have no idea what they're doing. They are blind, they are delusional, they are in the darkness. Yeah. So just like you have compassion for a sick person, because we don't choose to be sick normally. Yeah, it just happens to us. Okay, then you look after them because they are sick. You have compassion for them. We should have compassion in exactly the same way for someone who has lots of bad qualities, because they don't understand. They are seriously in trouble. They would like to be kind, they would like to do the right thing, but they can't. The conditioning from the past is so powerful. And this is where this idea of the lack of free will comes in. Because if you had free will, okay, then maybe you should make different choices. But the very fact that you are fully conditioned means that also they are due full compassion as a consequence. It's such a very, very powerful idea. Yeah, it's because if you use this, it's kind of, after a while, it gets very hard to get upset with people. And so when ultimately, the ultimate kind of end point of all of this is that when someone is nasty to you right in your face, to do something bad towards you immediately, instead of getting upset with that, you have compassion for them. You understand right there on the spot, here is a person who is trapped. Here is a person who is conditioned. Here is someone whose personality has been formed in such a way that all of these negative things come out. Remember, it has nothing to do with you. It is not personal. Yeah, it is never personal. It's only about to do the other person. And the moment you understand it's not about you, you don't become angry anymore. Because why then would you get angry about things? So I talk about this sort of thing all the time because I think it is so important. But it is all based on perception. And because we're talking about perception now, it is kind of the right time to mention this. So this is how you can think about things. And this idea is something you need to build up again and again and again. And as you build it up, as you remind yourself of this, it requires that you have some faith, obviously, and confidence in these teachings. Otherwise, it's hard to do. But once you kind of get your head around this, and you get some confidence in this, and you keep on building it up, there comes a time when you don't really get angry anymore. Or you might get momentarily a bit irritated, but then you overcome it very quickly as a consequence. So this is like the number one oppressive state, And of course, the opposite side of the coin is the metta, developing the loving kindness. And you can combine that. On the one hand, you overcome the ill will. On the other hand, you develop loving kindness in your meditation, in your actions, in your speech, in the way you think, etc., etc. And these two then build up together. The ill will goes down, the loving kindness and the compassion go up instead. And the idea of loving kindness, you develop it until you get something which is called the subbang adimutto. Adimutto is like focusing on or being intent on. And what you're intent on is subba. Subba means beautiful. You're intent on the beautiful. So when you develop your mind all the way to the very highest level of metta, you attain this mind state called the beautiful. Well, so what does that mean? Well, it means your mind is shining. It means your mind is brilliant. It means your mind doesn't have any limits. It means that you achieve some sort of state that is beyond what normal human beings ordinarily experience. It is like a liberation of mind where you have completely destroyed ill will or irritation. You come out, you can't even if you tried, you wouldn't be able to have ill will at that time. Of course, you're not going to try, but you can't have it anymore because you have achieved a kind of liberation where you're fully free of that. Even if you attain like the jhanas, the defilements will be gone for a period of time afterwards, and so you can't really get angry afterwards. So this is like the liberation that comes out of this, stage by stage, by practicing in this way. So this is one way of thinking about the liberation of perception. You can see it. Sometimes you read the suttas and you see all of this kind of what looks like very fancy terminology, but it comes down to some very fairly basic ideas. Now the other way of liberating your perception here is, of course, the one thing that we have seen again and again, and we see it here as well, is the problem of sensual pleasures, or sense pleasures. So this is the other place where we tend to get stuck. And this is maybe one of the most important places where human beings get stuck, because it seems so innocuous. It seems like fun. It seems like we have to enjoy. We have to eat anyway, so might as well enjoy it while we eat. So true, and I agree. Please enjoy your food. Being kind of trapped by sensual pleasure doesn't mean you should not enjoy your food. Please do so. If you don't enjoy your food, then usually you end up having a miserable life and you never come back again to Jhana Grove. That's not usually what happens. So please enjoy your food. So that's not really what it means, but it means more like the attachment to that world, the indulgence, the excessive indulgence in those things, eating all day, that kind of stuff, dreaming about food in the evening. It's very hard for all of you, right? Sometimes I feel really sorry for you because I know that you're not used to eating in the evening, and the evening comes. Oh, I wish I had eaten a bit more, during the mealtime. Now I feel really hungry. It can be really hard. Once you get used to it, it's kind of easy. So hopefully you have got reasonably used to it by now. I remember we had a lady on this retreat a few years ago. Is she here? No, she's not here. I'm just messing around. I know she's not here. And she said, oh yeah, you know, one of my biggest problems is that I'm so afraid of getting hungry in the evening that at lunchtime I really overeat, and then I kind of can't focus on the Dhamma, I can't meditate, can't do anything. It was kind of very funny. Yeah. I think after a while she kind of got into it. But the idea here is that the five senses and sensual desire, again, limits the mind. It contracts the mind, makes it small, it makes it constrained. It's not a bright mind, a large mind, a developed mind. It's something that is also very susceptible to suffering, because those objects and things in the world that you hold on to, they will always change. So there's all kinds of very serious problems with the five sense world. And so you need to develop that perception of the danger in that world. And as you do, your attachment to things in that world become less. And as your attachment becomes less, you recognize that. It means that when something goes wrong in that world, you don't react so strongly anymore. When someone comes to your house and steals something, you say, I'm so glad you can make use of that. Please take it. And that's beautiful. Like the Gatikara who took his straw roof, right? The Buddha took his straw roof and said, I'm so happy he took my straw roof. What a wonderful thing that is. And you become a bit like that. You're not so concerned about those things in that world anymore. And like the story of the $2,000 that Venerable Karunika's auntie used up while she was away is a similar kind of thing. Please take it. I can't really afford it, but anyway, you can take it. These are beautiful stories, and really, I don't know, So this is the thing, seeing the danger in sensual pleasures. I'm not going to talk about it now, because I talk about it very often on retreats. I'm doing another retreat in May, I'll probably talk about it then. This is the Potalya Sutta. I would recommend you to read it. It's a beautiful sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 56. It has 7 similes on sensual pleasures and the danger, and they are really stark and powerful similes. And there's more about sensual pleasures in the sutta. There's more similes that haven't even been explained by the Buddha. The one about the knife and the chopping board. That's a really powerful simile. It's a bit hardcore, so I'm not going to mention that now. There is the idea that sensuality is like a debt. Whenever you enjoy something, you build up a debt afterwards, all of these kind of things. So understand the limits of that world. If you do happen to watch the news occasionally, what you are seeing is the dangers in the sensual world right in your face. That's kind of one way of thinking about the news. Wars and these kind of things this is the danger in the sensual realm. This is precisely what it is about. The danger is not enjoying your food. The danger is much more these large-scale things. And that's what we should focus on. So, and then as you come out, now we're talking about the 2 most important of the 5 hindrances, sensual desire and ill will. If you can deal with those, your meditation is going to go really, really well. These are the main problems. This is what everyone should really deal with. And by overcoming that and by developing the opposites, which is renunciation and metta and compassion, to the best of your ability, you're going to go a long, long, long way on this path if you can do that fully. And then comes meditation. And one way of thinking about meditation is what you find in the Chula Sunyata Sutta, the shorter sutta on emptiness, Majjhima Nikaya 121. I have a note taker at the back of the room who notes down every sutta. As I say, it's really nice. And that's why they get printed out later on. It's good. It's amazing the kind of jobs people do, isn't it? People are really trying their very best to be of super duper service. Anyway, so in that sutta, it starts off by showing how you use perception to gradually let go of things and go deeper and deeper and deeper. You start off, and the Buddha says, well, in the beginning, you just start off by you're sitting in the forest. And you rejoice, while I'm here in the forest, all that there is the perception of forest and the perception of the village, of people and elephants and and chariots. There were no cars in those days, but chariots were noisy enough. Chariots and carts and oxen and whatever. All of that is gone. Hooray! All that is here is the perception of forest. Yeah, so you are now seeing the liberation. You are liberated from one kind of perception, and you go to something more refined. That's why Jhana Grove is in the forest or in the bush, because it's nice. Yeah, there's something about nature which is naturally peaceful compared to the city. City is like agitating and restless. Forest is beautiful and it calms you down to some extent. Yeah, so you use perception, let go of one, go to a more refined one. There's a gradual liberation of perception. Then you take up a meditation object. In this particular sutta, they use the earth as the meditation object. I think, that's kind of very rare. So let's take the breath instead. You take the breath up, and then when you take the breath, wow, now you are free of the perception of forest. All you have left is the perception of breath. Then you stay with the perception of breath, and then joy arises. Wow, all the painful feelings in the body are gone. I'm free of all those painful feelings. Now what I have is the happiness instead. Then as you keep on going deeper, the nimitta suddenly arises. The beautiful sign, the beautiful sun comes in the mind, and the body is largely gone. All you have left is the mind. Wow, the body is gone. The five senses are almost gone. All I have is this light in the mind. Your perception is getting more refined. Some perceptions are disappearing, others are arising. The new ones arising are more refined, they're more beautiful. You are liberating your perception. Eventually, you go into the jhana states. You go into the jhana states, you're liberating the mind again. Five senses, the body, the will, and many other things that are disappearing. The five khandhas have become very narrow and small. And because there's so little left of them, you come into the point where it's getting easier to get real insights. And then you go through all the jhanas, and eventually you come to the state of nothingness that we're talking about here. And that state of nothingness is like the highest liberation of perception. Beyond the state of nothingness, there is no further perception. There is the state of neither perception or non-perception, but it's kind of barely be called perception because it's so refined. But this is really the final state of perception. And this is why this is called the liberation of perception. You have liberated from all these other states, and this is all that remains. That is the idea here. So think of the path as a gradual liberation of your perception. Use perception very deliberately. Remember the perceptions that drag you down, the hana, bhaga, sanya, or bhagya, or bhaga, whatever, sanya. The perceptions that lead to decline. I've kind of explained it in quite a bit of detail now. You have some idea, especially with ill will and a bit with sensuality. And then go to the perceptions that lead instead to distinction and eventually to penetration. And when you see those perceptions, when you develop those, then you are among those people who have a chance to get enlightened. If you don't develop those, if you don't use these things properly, you will be among those who don't have a chance to get enlightened. This is kind of the one way of thinking about awakening on the Buddhist path. So this is the idea that you are freed in the ultimate liberation of perception. And how to use that idea as a gradual practice. So many ways of thinking about the gradual training. That is one way of thinking about it that I'm just talking about now. Then, having said that, and that is probably the most important part, because that gives you a feeling for the path, let's also look at the profound things at the very end here. They might remain there without traveling on. So this is what Upa Sutta says. On page 31 towards the bottom. And what they meant by that, the Brahmins, would be that this is kind of the liberation with Brahma. You have come to Brahma and now you stay there forever after or whatever with Brahma. And the Buddha then says that they might remain there without traveling on, which is kind of strange for the Buddha to say. Why would he say that? How can you go to a particular state and remain there? And I think the answer here is that this is talking about the Aryas, about the noble ones. And when the noble ones get reborn in this particular realm, they never come back again from that. They attain Nibbana after that. Yeah? So they remain there without traveling on. There's no more traveling on in samsaric existence. There's just the ending of things. So you can see here how the Buddha kind of redefines things a little bit. The Brahmins had one view of reality, and the Buddha has a different one. And so he's trying to guide this Brahmin very gently in the right direction here. If they were to remain there without traveling on, even for countless years, universal I, or the all-seeing I, and being freed, were to become cool right there. Siti, cool. They become cool right there. So if you really want to become cool, this is the way to become cool. Most people want to be cool, so forget about those sunglasses, just to go right to the meditation practice. Would the consciousness of such a one pass away? So you can see he is still kind of a bit confused. He doesn't really know what's going on. He's trying to find his way through this. So if you really become cool, of course, cool here means craving is ended. We had one of the monks sitting here the other day. His name is Siti Bhutto. It literally means become cool. So he has become cool. And I always liked that name. I was trying to get all these anagarikas in the monastery to please take this name, Siti Bhutto. You become the cool one if you become Siti Bhutto. That's the meaning. And I thought they would jump at the idea of being called the cool one. But no, they didn't like it. No one liked it until this one monk came, and finally what happened with him, the reason why he took it was because we had an ordination ceremony, and then he comes up and he was going to get ordained by Ajahn Brahm. Ajahn Brahm says, well, what's your name going to be? So I haven't got the name. And so I said, Siti Bhutto, on the sideline. And so he got Siti Bhutto. So that was the only way to get anyone to take the name Siti Bhutto. So you have to be. So this is kind of how it goes. Now you know a bit about how the monastery works. So or doesn't work, or however. So would that consciousness pass away? And then the Buddha comes with this beautiful saying, like a flame tossed by a gust of wind, replied the Buddha, comes to an end and cannot be reckoned. So too a sage, freed from all mental phenomena, comes to an end and cannot be reckoned. We can see sometimes, you can see a flame, like you have a large bonfire or something, and we can see like a flame being tossed up sometimes, and it kind of lasts for a second and it's kind of gone, like a flame tossed by the wind. And when it is gone, that flame, where is it? It's just gone, right? That's it. It cannot be reckoned, it cannot be measured, it cannot be talked about. There's nothing more to say about that flame. It's gone. So, in exactly the same way, sorry about the crackling here, in exactly the same way, if you are freed from all mental phenomena, you're already freed from the body a long time ago, because all you have left is the sphere of nothingness. That's all that's left. But if you are freed from that sphere of nothingness as well, that is what it means to be freed from all mental phenomena, then you come to an end and cannot be reckoned. When the flame goes out, when the arahant dies, that's the flame going out. What can you say about that arahant? You cannot be reckoned anymore in the same way as the flame. The flame is just gone. The arahant is just gone. The heat is gone. The person is no longer there. And it's one of those very hard things to understand. What do you mean, gone? What happens then? That's what people want to know. What happens when I'm gone? You're gone. That's what happens. It's hard to understand, but this is kind of the point of the Dhamma. The Dhamma is very profound. The Dhamma is counter to all other spiritual teachings in the world. Now you start to see why it is so counter. It is really, really profound. And you shouldn't really expect to understand it fully. If you understood it fully, it wouldn't be so profound, right? That's kind of the whole point. This is what makes it interesting. This is what makes it so counterintuitive. The vast majority of people in the world, they want to hold on to something. They want to grasp onto a self. They want to kind of carry on somehow. But the Buddha says, no, the highest happiness is to actually give up everything. As long as you're holding on, as long as there's a sense of self, as long as there's some kind of continuity, actually you're still part of the cycle of birth and death. You haven't escaped yet. The only way to escape is to let go completely. And by the way, it's also the highest happiness at the same time. So, you are freed from all mental phenomena. This means, first of all, that you are not clinging to them, first of all, and then when you are not clinging to them, then when you die, they just cease upon your deathbed. And the one who has disappeared, do they not exist? Yeah, he still doesn't get it. Do they not exist? Or are they free from disease for eternity? This is what the Brahmins wanted. We want to be free from disease for eternity. Yay! I'm going to hang out with Brahma, our uncle in the heavenly realm, become Brahma, whatever. Yay, Brahma, hooray! Please, sage, answer me clearly, for truly you understand this matter. And the Buddha replies, one who has disappeared cannot be measured, replied the Buddha. They have nothing by which others might describe them. When all things have been eradicated, eradicated too are all ways of speech. When someone has disappeared, you cannot describe them. There's nothing to be said anymore. Yeah, there is literally nothing to say. If there is nothing, there's nothing to say about it. It doesn't have any qualities. That's the whole point. If there was some kind of existence after the nibbana of an arahant, then you could say something, because there would be some kind of existence. There would be a certain way of making sense of it. Even if it is very profound, it can be talked about. Yeah, it is not, nothing that exists is entirely ineffable. Ineffable means it cannot be described by words. If something has some kind of existence, it becomes effable. Okay, whatever. You know what I mean? The opposite of ineffable, right? So it becomes effable, and so it is describable. But when something is completely gone, and there's nothing there, that is when it is truly ineffable, because there's nothing to be said about it. All you can say is about what is no longer there, but because nothing is present, there's nothing more to say. And that is the meaning of this. Anyway, I hope that there will still be a few of you left for this later on today. So suddenly all these cars leaving the Jhana Grove afterwards. These are really profound. And sometimes what you have to do is you have to see some of the people in the world who are really happy. Look at someone like Ajahn Brahm. Ajahn Brahm will say with a big smile on his face, he will say, yeah, everything is suffering here. This is kind of Ajahn Brahm for you, yeah? And it's kind of one of these very contrasting things. So take this for your consideration. Carefully just think about it and see what makes sense of, see if you can make any sense of it. And if you can't make any sense of it, don't worry too much. Yeah? Just know that as long as you're enjoying the practice, you will get something out of it. Then you can always discuss these things at some point if you're interested. But that is all for now, so please carry on enjoying yourself, and we'll see you back again at 7 o'clock this evening.